Okay, so that basic structure, but then also noticing that the overview or the matriarch benefits from that single pointed linearity in terms of the certain discoveries that can be made when that is given uh, priority or the emphasis. So this complexifies the dynamic. It's that um, that single pointedness can penetrate into new possibilities that an overview can then fill. So it's not looking so much like a static map, but within the field set up by the overview, the I take this to be like tantric grammar or logic. There's penetration, and then there's the possibility for an immersion into a new quality,
Ah,
and then so on and so on.
right.
Yeah.
Let me try an even a simpler analogy, one South Africans of my generation anyway know well, is the linear is the soldier, or in modern languages, the operator, and the overview is the general. And if you think of what a soldier has to manage, okay, kill, rape, destroy those things in that order, off you go, yay, and off we go. But the general, he can't just enjoy that sort of rugby moment feeling. He doesn't even get it. He's got to hassle over, which units have got kids of important politicians in? Shit, let's just do a little shuffle and arrangement for that. And how's the catering? How's the supplies of bullets? How's the industrial base behind what we're doing here? How long could we endure this or that? And so on. You can see it's a far more complex task. And it's, how to say, in terms of our own individuality, it's something that calls on our feminine side, our overview side, to engage that and process that complexity, to come out to linear decisions of, okay, that unit needs to go there, that unit needs to go there, and those guys need to go for a break and a bit of R&R. But overview informs that. And this is why you look back at the history of warfare and military commanders, and the thing that will stand out is most of them are terrible at it. You can see the male mind gets flustered about something that locks him onto a linearity, and he ignores 10 important things. And that's often been the story of warfare. And when it was, not Patton, I forget who it was, the American general that was sent to England to manage the D-Day invasions and stuff. I hear a story that when he arrived there, they said to him, look, we've got, plenty of men for the attack, but we've got one little problem. In our military, a soldier can demand an active posting. Nobody has to be stuck behind a desk if he doesn't want it. And so we got no staff for you. And he just replied, well, you have housewives? They said, sure, we have housewives. He said, no problem. Bring housewives. And his whole command room and the whole operations ran very smoothly. And that operation, biggest military operation ever on the planet as far as we recall. And it all went rather well, but it was managed all the way by women. That's not specifically about the gender thing. A male can have excellent overview. Give him enough time at that job and he'll start looking like a big pregnant woman, like, Winston Churchill or even Napoleon. The body will even adjust and feminize if the mind is being used in that way, predominantly. Sure. We see it a lot of, women in business that look really lean and mean and hard and cut, and they're absolutely in their masculine, using their masculine mind. It affects the body, the hormone system, everything. And of course, in the individual level and the social level, the question is, what's the right relating? What's the comfortable? Where can there be friendliness? And my suggestion is always, well, the overview is suited to holding the overview, and the linearity is suited to doing the linear things. You know, seems to be the way it's
Yeah.
designed. Let's roll with that. And in any of
I
us,
think, yeah.
no matter how much we feel of the other, we've got both. You know,
Mm.
some of us have a pretty shabby overview, but then we know, let's ask someone for overview. Let's check with the boss if we really should do this, etc. That's the appeal to overview. And of course, it's only in the male linear thinking that there's some notion of a superiority, inferiority there, you know, because, oh, the one commands the other. That's not superiority, inferiority. It's just a fit of function, is what I'm suggesting.
Yeah, yeah. I think a possible direction we could take would be like how that is educated, because that brings the school question into it, or the so in the linearity with this like mechanized engineering like training, simple task to do, fit these pieces together, boom boom boom, repeat. That's kind of reflected in our institutional structures and in the educational frames and in how we go about education. And then the overview finds its place. Well, it's not clear how it gets cultivated in a culture that predominates.
It's not.
So
it's not. It's not. Hence, it's severely lacking. If you look at political, politics on a short term, on a long term, the management of a nation's reputation, things like that, very few countries show any quality of overview. One country that does a little here and there is more when you get east. Japan, for example. Japan, from the management, the overview side, they understand that if you are jailing a really large proportion of your population and, your criminal injustice system has to constantly be on the alert and round the buggers up and imprison them, that, if you allow overview, that makes you look really terrible to other countries. That sort of announces to the world that we've got a real criminal population. Our average citizen is a dog. I mean, if you look at the public message America inadvertently sends to the world by imprisoning more of its population than anyone else, I mean, if you're going there, you've got to be nervous. Are you going to visit the most criminal place on the planet? Are you? Or the most persecuted place. Let's assume the people aren't bad, but then, wow, the government imprisons more people than Mao, Stalin, and Pol Pot combined. What the hell's going on? But the Americans have more linearity, pretty much zero sense of overview. How can you if you're changing your head man every 4 years, or woman? Every 4 years, you supposedly got a whole new government. That obviously gives a hint it can't really work like that. That's for the show. But you look at the Japanese context, you look at their crime stats, and you'll say, wow, either this government never prosecutes anyone, or there's just no criminals, man. Everyone behaves themselves immaculately. And that's a powerful thing to say about your nation to the world. And it's not true. There's statistical wiggles behind it. What Japan cleverly does is it realizes it's got the modern state of Japan, but then it also has the older, more tribal, more honor-bound systems that used to be the samurai. And so crimes of the samurai family that have become the underworld and the crime world, the Yakuza, that's not reported like as this in the stats of the modern Japan. It's irrelevant to it. So that doesn't make it into any official crime statistics. It's just gone. So there's a bit of a flim-flam, but it's not about the flim-flam or the honesty of it. It's about look at what overview chooses. In the American scenario, there's no overview. There's no overview to even care. How are we making our people look by the way we treat them? How are we making our country look by the things the world gets to hear about us? There's no concern for that. You know, there's just, let's have a powerful enough man in to say, hey, this is America, do it our way, bitch. You know, that's pure linearity all the way. Whereas the Japanese, there's more, you know, there's some depth and subtlety to what's going on. What you see from them, you should apply your overview to it and look and see. Really? Do they actually have no criminals? Really? And so on. And as I said, it isn't trained in the world. It isn't. I mean, our whole schooling system is absolutely based on linear command structure. You know, all the way.
Yeah.
I mean, the most important things they teach in school is to stand in rows tallest to shortest, hide under desks when you're told to be scared. And that's about it. You know, obey orders reflexively against your own logic, against your own feeling. Just obey. That's the system. I mean, it wasn't ever created to make people clever. It was created to make better soldiers, because countries kept on finding that people got their own ideas in the middle of a war. Oh, I think I'd like to go visit my wife and sort out the farm a bit. And so they just leave. But how to get people to not do that? And then, you know, if you look at the old statistics of war, even in the age of guns, right up to and including Vietnam, I think it's something like 80% don't shoot when they're told to shoot at the enemy. The 20% that do shoot in the general direction, into the ground, into the air. They're not killers. They don't want to kill anyone. And 2% shoot that guy, that guy, that guy. And those 2%, half of them are psychopaths and half of them are doing it for love. Basically. But you look at schooling and look at the modern training of military and the very reflexive stuff and the paintball games they play and so on and so on. And then look at the psychological problems that come from all these guys who go into action, kill people, and then realize they do it purely from their linear training. And then they realize in the shock and horror, oh my God, you know, I've just murdered a bunch of people. And the psychological problems are therefore much greater, because you've got people who aren't natural killers doing the killing.
People who are natural killers.
Who are not natural killers. Yeah. They're doing the killing. You know, if you're the Victoria Cross kind of winner, you're killing for love. You're killing because you were an older, responsible sibling, typically, and you feel your troops as your family or your kids, and there's a machine gun chewing them up. Yeah, you'll crawl through the bush and go shove a hand grenade up their ass. You'll do it, you know. You'll kill it's for love, essentially. And if you're a psychopath, you'll enjoy, oh, I get to kill. Yay. And you go do your murder. But if you're not one of those guys, and now you've thrown a hand grenade into a school bus and like wiped the whole thing out, or shot a rocket grenade into a kindergarten or something, I mean, you're going to feel bad. You know, you're going to need heavy therapy. But
so I think let's go into this question of how you create that context in which implicit learning can happen. So even as I say that, I can recognize like a certain linearity in that, trying to approach it directly, like trying to thinking about it in terms of design or in terms of that mechanism. But it's still a problem that poses itself, like thinking through the implicit place, so that learning is afforded, and I think you're a good person to ask in the context of mystery school and in the context of your name. Are you interested in going in that direction?
Sure. I mean, I teach overview, and I've had to develop what I would hopefully I'd like to claim is a not too shabby overview myself. Because, you know, if you teach a thing, it's best to get some aptitude in it yourself. But nonetheless, even though I claim the integration of my masculine feminine, It's a male body. It prefers to do things in male ways. I'm generally far happier doing one linear focused thing. I'm happier with, I'm happier welding than having a meeting with the faculty of the school. But I do both, and I hope I'm competent a little bit in both areas. But different skills, different times. I mean, often the way I'm encouraging the women to overview is I do it in a male linear way. I will give them extreme data points to just shake up their linearity and the sort of the linear framing of thinking. I mean, one little example, like in linear thinking, we divide things into categories. It simplifies the story massively for us, and we get to handle the world in terms of those categories, much simpler than handling it in terms of the individual, actual things going on and what truly applies to it. That's complicated. And just as data points to shake up that linearity and that thing of putting things in boxes. Two examples I like is, horses in history. And who knows, I don't know, some maybe nowadays, maybe some Lipizzanas and war horses are still trained this way. Certain tribes of warriors used to train their horses, and not really train, more like allow their horses to eat meat. Sometimes specifically the corpses on the battlefield after the battle. Now that's something no horsey owner wants to know, and we think of horses as vegetarian. But no, just as a data point, no. Under some circumstances, horses are happy to eat meat, makes them strong. Warriors used to like horses that ate meat. It happens. Sheep too. Sheep are completely vegetarian. You don't get a more archetypally vegetarian creature. But sheep on certain little islands somewhere up near England happen to have no calcium in the ground. So there's really bugger all calcium in what they're eating. And they need calcium to grow their bones. So what do they do? And, to grow their young, to produce the skeletons for their babies. So what do? They go to the birds' nests, where Arctic terns, those sort of miniature seagulls, have nests. And apparently it's quite a macabre sight. You can go for a walk around there and come across all these nests where all the baby birds have had their heads off and their legs off, because those are the high calcium bits. And the sheep would know their taste guides them to eat that. And I just give those kind of data points as a hint, because you can see, just knowing that, it shakes up your certainty about a category like vegetarian. It shakes up your certainty around, what would be a threat to birds, for example. Now, these may be completely irrelevant to you, but having data points like that, knowing that almost every linear category, no matter what, has an exception, has exceptions. So it's how to say, if you're rigid in your linearity, you'll never find overview. Yeah. But just to shake that up. Yeah.
With the it's a funny thought, the new threat to birds.
Yeah. Careful, watch out, here come the sheep, Lock up your chickens.
I wonder how long it would take to become encoded in a evolutionary way, I guess.
Well, there again, also the hints of the overview is where nature operates. Look at it. In terms of male thinking about it, sheep on an island where there's insufficient calcium for them, simple enough, they should just die. Obviously, you shouldn't try and farm sheep there. Duh. But a sheep has enough complexity in its system for its taste buds and its urge to arise to go and eat those baby birds in the nest. They look tasty to the sheep, and the sheep go crunch them up. Now, think of yourself. You're in a world, it's got, we've got all the toxins of the environment, all the juicy things of the environment. Right. Now, okay, advertising and la pressures us, but if you escape that and you go, okay, what am I wanting to eat today? What suits And, your body even has a level of it, of your tastes will guide you to the right thing. I mean, one fellow around the school, very strong on his dietary kind of attitudes, very won't go near poisonous, terrible sugar. And then he'd see me having a Red Bull or a Coke or something after a session. And I'd say, yeah, but, depletion. My body screams for that sugar when I've drained those physical energies. It wants the sugar. And sugar's maybe arguably the brain's favorite or second favorite food. Like, I feel a craving for it. I'm not going to resist it. He thinks, you're being indulgent. You're having, a bit of a Red Bull or a Coke. And then some months ago, I remember he told me, he said, I get it. He had 3 sessions in a row, very exhausting, and afterwards he had an undeniable craving, specifically for Coca-Cola, max sugar. And for once in his life, he went, well, never mind my 1 point of judgment. The body really clearly wants it. Let me have one. And he thought, wow, the body loved it. It sucked it in. It rushed it through the blood. And, I feel so recovered. There's no, overview has to discard half of common knowledge and half of certainty, because on the male side, we love having a simple understanding of a thing. Sheep's a vegetarian, so's a horse, a nice simple understanding by which we can juggle some symbols and think we know what we're doing. That's the masculine substitute for overview. But the other side of brain is there. It's just not used that much. The best research I've seen around this topic was some team, they wired up chickens so that they could tell which parts of the chicken brain was pinging, depending its activity, which parts are in action. And overview is held on the right-hand side of the brain typically, and linearity on the left. And what they see with the chicken, there's the chicken doing what chickens do. It's sorting out from what's on the ground, what's a good bug to eat, what's a good stone to eat, what's a thing to avoid. And it's quite complex. Linearity can be very complex, and it's picking away, getting its food. But then the gate opens. The farmer's wife approaches with more grain, or the cat comes by. Something, and right-hand side of brain fires up. And if it fires up enough, the chicken stops eating, runs away from the cat. Or stops eating here, runs over to farmer's wife because there's going to be much richer food there. That's the crudest way, in a way, the simplest way of indicating this natural function. You have to have the brain that focuses into the task, the important thing now, and gets on with it. You have to have the other part of the brain surveying the surroundings, getting the vibe of things, and then you have to have a nice balance between them. If a chicken got it wrong, if a chicken got a misbalance going between its overview and its linearity, then it's going to be running like a chicken every time someone comes near the gate, never mind if they open it. And it's going to die of starvation.
Yeah.
But us humans, we manage to get away with getting it way wrong, and yet we still muddle by a lot. But you can see the importance. You have to have both, as an individual, but also as an organization, society, culture, country. At any level, overview applies, and linearity needs to serve it. And that fit,
Let me add some material here. I've been thinking overview in terms of, I think it fits quite good in terms of that relational context. Or so then you have something like a psychotherapy or psychoanalysis, and you have this it's intended to be a unique relationship for the person coming into the therapy. The therapist is going to give that to them. And now there's different schools as to how that relationship should work or whatever. The kind of shorthand, the way that I understand it, there's a kind of direction that the therapist wants to go, and they're like negating themselves. So the context might come with a whole bunch of stuff, and then in the process of therapy there might be projection into like a father relationship, mother relationship, and the therapist is slowly unraveling that, and so kind of receding, and then in the end, if therapists are honest enough to aim for that end, that context wants to completely negate itself. The therapy wants to end. It has a goal or an end to it. So that's kind of one example of a relational context. Then we had last week this introduction of the theme of teacher-student form, taking that form of friendship as being the most appropriate to teaching in our time, it seems. Then, if I imagine into a this is all coming in the context, like the overview thinking is thinking the container, or the context that affords implicit learning. So then, in the tantric context, I think there's this cultural pickup of there not being the exclusion of the possibility of sex within that context, and so then it can become dominated by that sense that it's about sex. Then there's a bunch to work through there.
Oh, sure. Oh, yes. I mean, from people looking at and what Tantrikas put out, people tend to look, oh, you guys do sex. Oh, okay. That's easy. You're in the box of bad people.
It's like there's this in that context, the gesture of inclusion or an allowance, and so when this a repressed culture meets a tradition or an enactment like that, everything that is repressed in that culture, these people are saying this is a space of inclusion and allowance, and so then the shadow can get projected quite easily onto what's happening there and what that is about.
Yeah. In your therapy example, a lot of therapy, derived from Freud, derived from Jung. Jung was better. Jung had a quality of overview. If you read his works, if you look at his stuff, his mind was wide-ranging, many an interest, many a thing he'd refer to in supporting an argument, and so on. Whereas Freud, you read his notes, well, I was giving a lecture, he says, and I gave an exceedingly good lecture, probably largely on account of the amount of cocaine I consumed just before it. I was explaining complicated stuff, obviously way beyond the audience, but I gave them the impression, the important thing was, of course, to give them the impression that I know what I'm talking about. And if you think of lecturers at universities or schools, so many lecture in the Freud mode,
I think I have a question there. So if Jung is at like I've heard this shorthand of the two and the difference. He's at a cultural level, or he's like his brilliance is in the analysis of the collective unconscious. So he's analyzing at that level, and so it has that applicability. Yeah. Freud is coming into like a person or one-to-one, like the person and their unconscious.
Right.
So then the question, I think, would because also earlier when you brought in the military example, like the war, and the question has to do with how much is the cultural understanding, a sense of world history, a sense of the movements in world history, or a sense of myth. How much is that overview, and how much isn't it?
Right. Yeah. So some when thinking of it linearly, in a linear way, you get things like, the country remembering which part of our population encouraged another country to get into the war against us. And, those are our traitors. So then next war, we're going to kick them out of the country. Or, that's basically what happened to Germany in the First World War. They had the war won, but then a part of their population went and organized some people to come help out and beat them. And that led to, you get then that kind of thing just based on a resentment. And what are people after? They're after revenge, or they're after, there's a linearity to it. Now, it's not like the feminine side doesn't have vengeance, but there it's overview. It's like, we might have had trade agreements and good business with those people for 100 years, but you know what happened 100 years ago? And if that weighs heavily in the overview, they're still our enemies. They're still our enemies. You don't lose track of that. In fact, that's like the dark side of overview and the feminine is maybe, one of the skills of overview is loading up what's important to the situation. I mean, when women learn this stuff from me, like at the point I know that their feminine mind is awakened, it's coming along. Well, that's the point at which it steps and processes, doesn't look pretty all the way along. So that step, a woman, particularly a woman, but us guys, we do it too. But as I say, it's less of a thing for us, typically. I mean, it's a rare man that has overview in the category that can stand up against the better woman, a bit like it's a rare woman that has tennis to the extent she can stand up against the better man. There's overlap, but the differences are as big as the differences in tennis. But anyway, so a woman coming into her overview, first real stage of what has to happen there is never mind command, never mind coming to choices in the overview, just expanding out the overview. Just every action, what are its consequences and what context is it in, and expanding that out. And of course, then expanding it out to the ultimate of everything. If you go into expansion, as far as expansion goes, wow, it's way too big an overview. And the stage, the little phrase I've come to describe it by is when I'm talking to a woman around this, I'll say, have you been spending a lot of time in bed until 11 o'clock in the morning, eating chocolate, drinking red wine, and absolutely unmotivated to move out of the bedroom or to engage with anything, because you realize that all actions, every linearity you may come up with, ultimately in the full expansion of it, ends up in basically the heat death of the universe. And you could say a woman in such a condition, I mean, there are therapists who take a view, my God, that's pathological. Whoa, that's dysfunctional. No. It's an essential step. They have to have that period of red wine and chocolate 11 o'clock in bed. There's my male mind's focused definition of it. Because when they have expanded to that, then, and only when they have expanded to that extent that they realize the intrinsic meaninglessness of it all, then, okay, let's consider the next level of direction I give them, when they're ready, because it's not going to work a second before, is okay, well, let's consider a thing like, never mind the everything and how it goes in eternity. What about your lifetime? Let's see if we can get it down to this year, what you might want to do this year. And then what's relevant? Yes, out to the heat death of the universe is not relevant. Come in a lot from that. come into things that are just your lifetime or just the next couple of centuries after you. Limit it. And then within that context, what's relevant? What should be included for the overview of this? That, you see, I mean, to go absolute with overview is just as dysfunctional as going absolute with linearity. You know, absoluteness with overview, well, the general ennui of the totality of existence doing its big cycle. Great, great, great. That doesn't tell you shit about what you're going to do this afternoon. You know, that can't inform the present. But bringing it down to, okay, let me look at my finances. Then what's relevant? There's quite a bit that's relevant to finances. It can be quite a wide-ranging thing, but what's relevant to it? Load up that data, make the call. And where I say men can be good at this, but good in the way that, you know, Serena Williams can be good at tennis. Men can be good to the point they can beat most women at it, but the ones who are top of the game, no, they've got overview worth respecting. You know, that they have a different quality of it when they get it right. One of the limits on the masculine brain, which is predominantly, you know, left brain, is we don't forget enough. We don't forget enough. When a woman is making a decision, I remember dear Shakti Beloved deciding she needs a car. Now, what car? Whoa! Overview. My God, what would it be? A pink Rolls Royce, a green Cadillac? What would be the right car for the Dakini, you know? And she's challenged to that. So she goes, she gathers the information, she talks to car people, she visits dealerships, she takes test drives. After about 6 months, yeah, she's got a pretty good idea of where she's going. Then she limits it to that, and then she eventually gets the little car, you know? But that process, where a male's weak in that, is that when we work with overview, it's very hard for us to include the relevant stuff to the overview. You know, everything, some comment we heard about a kind of car from some guy being judgmental about it years ago, will make it into our overview. It's not relevant. That kind of car's not made. We're not even looking at that. But now we're edgy about looking at Fords because, etc. You know, when I exercise my overview, I have to quite consciously just watch out for extraneous stuff I know that's not relevant. You know, because I have that male kind of mind that it's very hard for me to ever forget anything. I've been drunk in my life to real drunk, you know, like Dean Martin says, you're not really drunk if you can lie on the floor without holding on. You know, I've been that drunk, but I've never slipped a memory from it. My brain hangs on to every little memory every damn moment, you know, and so when I work with overview, my biggest challenge is limiting what should be included in the overview of this. And that's you could say an intrinsic weakness of the masculine system when working with it. But overview, this is where if you come across women that have had a career or two, and let's start with the example of a man. I mean, I've done many things in my life. If you put me underground on a mine tomorrow and tell me to drill, drill, and that means instructing the drill workers to drill the holes to blow a face correctly and then pack it with explosives correctly and blow it. The embarrassing thing, in a sense, is I could probably do that job. I might overcharge the holes. I might use too much explosive. I might get some of the angles a little wrong, but it's going to work. Those skills that I learned at 17 years old, they're still in there. But you ask almost any woman that's had a career or two to do something she did 10 years ago. She's lost. She's lost. It's forgotten. She's got some memories of it, yes, sure. But the details, the linearity of the procedures that she used to be very good at, no, it's gone now. You know? Because the female mind was very good at loading up. It's designed to be good at loading up what's relevant for the overview now. And then as the situation changes, the overview even governs what's the contents of the overview, what's relevant, what's irrelevant, and so on. And I say, just there in the mechanics of it, the male mind has a difficulty there, typically, you know.
Yeah. I appreciate that there's something about the situational awareness or that overview capacity that is close to learning, or so like the ability to pick up a new skill, but then the skill is like situationally relevant. So then it's not hardening into procedure that then becomes almost the
right. Now, of course, if something gets very strongly into the overview of a woman, say disproportionately, like not in good balance, then you can get the real dark side of overview, the dark side of the feminine. The best study I remember that showed me that, it was a study someone did on feuding cultures. You know, cultures where you're supposed to kill, someone that's in another family for the honor of your family, and so on. And they found out it's the women who keep it going. It's the women rule that. It's your granny showing you when you're a little boy, showing you daddy's shirt or uncle's shirt with the bloodstains. And winding you up already, setting you up, like I say, every man's a mind job of some woman, setting you up, that you're going to go and kill his son, when you're big. And there's this, I'm not saying it's totally dysfunctional, that thing of feuding, we didn't like it, it was an interesting thing we more or less removed it, basically by ending families. You have the nuclear family now, just man, woman, child. So there's no real opportunity. And you could say that's a great thing in the world. But, that kind of overview, in some situations, it stopped people from being friendly with tribes that were out to get them, because the old memory was there and it was still included in the overview. But on a dysfunctional level, it can become that the old bat gets really vicious in her old age and, sends her little grandsons to go wreak revenge. And it can be quite ugly.
In the context of teaching and learning, we can make that error if we use like a word like life, like you want to be situationally aware for life. Now that's just too abstract, and so the reality of it is that much of life has been mechanized, overtaken, is put into its ruts, and life just goes on in that way, and then there can be discrepancies or habits within that flow that begin to produce a bit of pain or some harm, and then that can give cause for kind of leaving that rut or changing that little pocket of life. In the context of teaching and learning, and now I think we have to talk about things like character or the person, or we would have to frame we'd have to give a go at the ultimates, like what's the goal of this. Then so in your book there was a piece on mind training. I think it was under strategies, or and there's I think it's just a paragraph on practices that it made me realize how much I love this kind of teaching that have to do with just little modifications or like suggestions or invitations to you have to live it out in your life. That's like a silly one that I did was close my right eye for an hour, and then some things that you can do, like I'm going to avoid this word. When I speak to people, the one that I've kind of been following it a little bit today, but I think I could do better. I'll try again tomorrow. Just laughing as much as you are allowed to, and how it immediately puts it into an uncontrived, into as uncontrived a situation as possible, so that your normal mind is functioning as it would function, and then you introduce a bit of difference, and you see how it reacts. So with this insistence in me in terms of thinking the pragmatic context, like a teaching and learning design, or how that my mother's in education, so if our minds are made by our moms and women in our life, I think this is why I inherit this position.
Mm.
So I keep coming to think the implicit context, and I can err in terms of just like negating it into life, and then it means almost nothing, and then there's this oscillation. So I'll hand it back to you there.
Yeah, there you find it, that if your overview goes too far, you end up with a lack of any fire, any spark, any motivation. You start to head in the direction of what I'm describing about the women in bed at 10 in the morning with 11 in the morning with red wine, you know? It's like if your overview gets too big to the situation, you get a kind of paralysis from it. And then if your overview is insufficient to it, or you discard or ignore your then you plow ahead on some one-pointed focus and find out usually it's a horrible fuck up and you've really dug yourself a hole or whatever. You know, it's all in finding the appropriate balance. Mind training is largely good discipline for the linearity. The core features of good mind training tend to be things like, one is integrity, as in not trying to look very good to the world. No, integrity is to yourself first, and then sure outward. But then again, that your outward can have factors, you know. But inwardly, that your thinking, your planning, your thinking about a thing is in alignment with your feeling about a thing, and is in alignment with your actions in relation to that thing. And putting those three parts together, you know, your thinking, your feeling, your action, or not even putting them together, just looking for where are they together? Where can they be together? Because then you're strong in your one-pointed focus. You're strong with it. Another one is keeping your agreements. Most societies and secret societies, and it goes all the way from things like EST in America to it's called Quest, I think, in South Africa more these days. Very good mind training systems out there. But even down to the level of your local little church having a sign up saying Alpha Mind Power Training or something like that. The first lessons of those kinds of practices, one of the key things that really should be in there with good ones is a great discipline around keeping your agreements. Such trainings, you know, they'll set the clock and baby, you 1 minute late arriving for the clock, like, you know, and the door is locked and there's a sign saying bugger off, you know. Like, we're not interested in you, you know, that kind of thing, getting a good discipline going with keeping your agreements. Why? Yeah, sure, it makes things nicer for people around you if they can rely on you and you make an effort to keep your agreements, and you make an effort to not make agreements when you don't feel you can really give your all to them, you know, that. And when you have the mental flexibility to go, okay, wait, I'm not going to be able to keep that agreement. So you get hold of the person, you say, I need to change it. I can no longer give my agreement to that I said. It's going to have to go another way or whatever. But responsibility with that in training in the exterior, very valuable, because not because of the exterior. I couldn't give a shit about that. On the interior, you start to keep your agreements with yourself.
Yeah.
And there's the value of it, that if you have those qualities, it makes your linearity what Jordan Peterson would call competent. So when your overview indicates, well, yeah, I need to get a new job, well, your competence lines up for it. You dress for it, you prepare for it, you read a little bit about the company, you try find something that the guy that's interviewing has published or something, so you can quote him to himself when you go in the interview. You're in agreement with yourself and you're integrous. When you go in there, you present with your words, your thoughts, your feelings, congruous, all together to the same purpose. That's really the value of mind training, and keeping, you could say, really core basic principles together. Usually, the simpler the better. Notions like what is, and what isn't. And if you just have that running like a little mantra, then you save yourself from reacting to responding to a whole lot of things that aren't. And it can help you determine what actually is. I mean, if physicists had had a bit of training with that, they wouldn't be in the mess they're in. But yeah.
the honesty, that personal agreement. I noticed this morning, when I become deceptive with myself, it's through a little agreement that I've made with myself, but haven't kept.
Yeah.
It hasn't come into action. And then it's like, why is that agreement being made? And it's because the thing that I made an agreement over, there's some problem, there's some tension, there's something there that an agreement will resolve, but I'm not committed to carrying it out. I just want to get that tension away.
Right.
So then I close it with a little agreement, and now when the more that I do not carry that out into action, the more deceitful I become with myself.
And the more you lose trust. You lose trust with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scary, that.
Oh, yes. I mean, I've got a little story might describe, just to fill in more of this dynamic. One of the teachers of our school, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, beautiful Shakti, when she was coming along into, she was really getting strong and in her teaching, and she realized she'd been teaching women various things, but she realized that, that she had now stuff to really teach. It was time to maybe put together a group, invite people that worked at her before and so on, and put together a group and do a week-long, whatever, group training thing. So she put together her program, her overview says that's what to do. Now's the time to do this group. And she was at that point, very much working with this masculine, feminine overview linearity quality. And as I've hinted to you, first steps in working with that is to really let them separate. You're not creating a separation. You're revealing the separation there is, and you're allowing both of them to come into the game. Sure, integration's the aim. We're going to get there. But at first, they're felt as two separate things. So she had a clear separation going on. She was really in her feminine when she was doing the plotting and planning and the scheming of what needs to happen. And then she handed it over to her linearity, as in to her masculine, like a conversation between the two. Okay, this is what I want to do. That's what it involves. It involves the advertising it. It involves the booking the venue. It involves putting together 100 juggles. It involves taking the money. All right, all of that. Are you up for it? And her masculine, I can do it. And she had good, strong, well-developed, well-trained in our culture, masculine, PhD grade masculine, And so, okay, she's do it. And next couple of weeks, whatever it was, in her activity, in her focus, getting done what she needs to do, all her parts working together, so to speak, in full integrity with it, gets the group together, teaches the group, And the group ends, everyone goes, she locks up the venue and goes and gets in her car and sits down and feels a weird kind of sadness. And wonders, what the hell's going on here? And so she looks and she feels, her masculine voice. What does it want to say? It wants to say, was that okay? Because the masculine has no overview. It doesn't even know if it's done well, even when it's put its heart and soul in. It knows it put its heart and soul in, but it doesn't know if it succeeded. And from her overview, from her feminine, oh my God, yes, that was not only okay, that was magnificent. That was totally gorgeous. That was exactly what I wanted of you. And feeling that lovingness arising between her linearity that had achieved and her overview that had wanted it and instructed it. And that was really for her the start of those two parts becoming really friendly. And it's not that far from there to what in Tantra is called Mahamudra, or the great union, the great exercise of letting those two become one. That the two sides of yourself fall in love from the reliability they find in each other. The linearity loves being held, guided by the overview. It loves being assessed by the overview. Knowing, how did I do?